Day zero is the moment before company formation, when a founder decides to take the plunge, follow their dream, and commit to pursuing their vision of change. On day zero, you'll hear founders tell their story. From the initial idea, through reactions by critics and skeptics, setbacks and successes, we'll cover it all. Behind every company is a founder with ambition, goals, dreams, and wisdom to be shared. Let's explore them together.
Well, good morning, Ben, and welcome.
Good morning, Gary. Good to see you.
So what did the young Ben think about leadership, or at what point did you start thinking about leadership?
Yeah, I'd say kind of my first introduction to it was on the freshman football team at Berkeley High School. And we had this coach, Chico Mendoza, and he gave us, the kind of, when we first joined the team, he kind of gave us a speech. And the speech was, I still remember it to this day. It was, it's like, well, if you guys don't want to practice hard, turn your shit in, which meant, turn your equipment in. If you want to, you can refer to me as Coach Mendoza or as Coach or as Mr. Mendoza. If any of you guys call me Chico, turn your shit in, and the whole speech was like that, turn your shit in. And I just remember thinking, I got it. I was like, there's no way that I'm not like finishing the year. I'm ever turning my equipment in. And that team was a funny team because we played so hard. We didn't even have any passing plays. We just ran the ball every time, and we went 8-0 and won the championship. But it was kind of, it was a very kind of colorful, interesting kind of leadership that he had.
When did your interest in computer science develop?
Yeah, so, I went to Columbia University in the early 80s. And, at that time, computer science really wasn't so much a thing. It was a little bit, a lot of universities kind of around that time refused to consider it a legitimate major because they thought that the real thing was electrical engineering and software was just some, minor tooling on top of the computer. It was a complete misunderstanding of what was going on. They literally thought of it as like refrigerator repair or something like that. Like, how can you major in refrigerator repair? And I remember taking this class where we learned Alan Turing's proof that, basically if you had a machine that was Turing complete, then that machine, from a computational power standpoint, could do anything that any machine you could ever come up with could do. And that, you could make them faster, more powerful or whatever, but you couldn't, that machine could do everything. And it struck me then, and this proof is from the 1941 maybe, but it struck me at the time that, oh my God, there's going to be one machine that kind of does everything, which, at that time we had tape recorders and calculators and alarm clocks and, watches and video cassette players and, word process. We had so many different machines, every machine different for a different task. And I was like, wait a minute, there's going to be one thing that does everything. And that I was so intrigued by that idea. And then the other thing is it really felt like a secret because even though he figured it out so long ago, nobody knew that. Nobody I knew that. And so, that I was like, I've got to major in that. And that turned out to be a good choice for me.
After Columbia and UCLA, you had a career both in established companies and startups. What was it about startups that attracted you?
Well, I was just really, really excited to, show what I knew. And, in a big environment, it's just really easy to, kind of feel like people don't see you, you're not making impact, that kind of thing. And so that's kind of what caused me to join, the first startup I joined. I was like, wow, I can, kind of be in the center of things. Turned out to be not a smart career decision in that I was at a really great company called Silicon Graphics, and then I went to a company that turned out to be not so good called NetLabs. But I did, I certainly learned a lot about what it meant to build a company, and I learned a lot about leadership and that kind of thing, and what works and what doesn't, and how you can really quickly lose credibility if you're not careful.
Well, you then met Mark, joined
Yeah.
Netscape, and I've read that you said that you were fascinated by it because you thought they were going to change the world. What did you mean by change the world?
Well, so, in those days, it was kind of a slow period in computers, if you can imagine that. So kind of Windows 3.1 had become pretty dominant. Microsoft was, I would say, quite ruthless in that, anybody who built an application on the PC that did well, they would clone and kind of destroy by bundling it with Windows or using some special advantage. So, it's really hard to kind of start a new company and get things going. And at the time, I was at a company called Lotus, makers of 123 and so forth. And they had this product, Lotus Notes, which was, intriguing in that it was kind of a little bit like how you would build the internet in a proprietary way. But the fact that, like, in order for it to actually manifest and have full value, everybody kind of in the world would have had to have notes. And then, I saw the browser and I was like, holy crap, this is it, right? This is kind of the promise of everybody being able to work together through computers. But like the whole problem that Notes had, which they had to sell to every company in the world and every consumer, it didn't matter because it was like this thing was just open and it used what was available on the internet. So once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. I was just like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I literally, I tried everybody I knew who might know somebody at that company, and I got myself an interview. And, thankfully I got the job. That definitely changed my life.
Yep, I could see that for sure. Well, you became a CEO. You were CEO of a tech company for roughly 20 years. You led IPOs, you engineered M&A, and you sold Opsware for $1.6 billion,
Yeah.
which, by the way, in today's dollars is almost $2.5 billion.
Yeah.
So well done there. But looking back on it, what were the kind of the main leadership lessons that you took away from that 20 years as a CEO?
I mean, there's so many, and I've obviously written 2 books about them because there are so many, but like some of the ones, I mean, I think one of the most difficult ones is, which I see so many people struggling with now, is, how do you get to the truth? Because as the leader, you're always in a very dangerous area if you're off of the truth, the truth about the product, the truth about the company, the truth about everything you're doing. I see it a lot actually today in kind of the realm of how people deal with politics or diversity, where they do things that they know aren't true, but they feel like they have to do them because that's what people want them to do, and then they find themselves in like really dangerous positions because they're they've taken a position on something that they don't themselves believe in, and so as a leader, you really have to work hard to get to what's true. And then kind of the second thing, which I really learned from Bill Campbell, is that, as the leader, you're never talking to the person you're talking to. You're talking to the whole company. So somebody comes and says, hey, Ben, I need a raise. Well, I can go, Gary's good. Maybe he does deserve a raise. I'll give him a raise like that. Like, I'm not talking to Gary. I'm talking to everyone in the company, because the next thing that happens is, we're at the company picnic or whatever. And, Gary's wife is friends with Jeff's wife. And he goes, hey, how's it going, with Gary? Oh, it's great. He just got a raise. What? He got a raise? Why didn't Jeff get a raise? Because he didn't ask. Like, he's got to stand up for himself. And then, you get into these like weird politics. Was that really fair? Did you think about that? And everything is like that, from, how you organize the company to what you think about a given product or anything, you're always talking to the whole company, and you always have to represent the people who are not in the room, because they really need representation. It's very, very important from a leadership standpoint that just because I'm not here doesn't mean I'm not working. And so you really have to think of it in those ways, and otherwise you get into this weird, cliquish, highly political environment.
To follow up on that, there's always this long-standing discussion about there's natural athletes, natural musicians, natural leaders, but there's a lot of debate about that. What's your thought? I mean, are some people just naturally better leaders? Doesn't mean that everybody doesn't have to work to be a leader, but do you think some people are just more natural at it?
Well, I think CEOs are much more made than born. Which is why there are so many different kind of flavors. Like, Mark Zuckerberg is nothing like Elon Musk, is nothing like Brian Chesky, is, nothing like Jeff Bezos. So so if they're natural, then how did those four, being also different, get to that point? And I think that the truth of it is, a lot of leadership starts, like I said, with truth, and truth starts with being yourself. So if you kind of think that, okay, there's some natural way to do it, it actually is very, it becomes very self-defeating. And and then a lot of it is super unnatural. So for example, and it's I always liken it to boxing. So boxing is a very weird, unnatural sport in that, if you just do it the way, you would ordinarily fight, you're going to be terrible at it. And being a CEO is a lot like that. So, a kind of natural thing for humans is you want people to like you, kind of just from an anthropological standpoint, it's kind of important to, tell people things they want to hear so they don't stab you in the head or whatever. And that's a really bad quality in a leader, is telling people what they want to hear. That's horrible. You're not actually providing any leadership at that point. Every important decision you make, is going to be controversial, because if it was what everybody wanted to hear, then they could you don't even need a leader, which is part of the problem with our political environment. Nobody's willing to say what they think. They just want to say what they think, that what the polls told them to say. And, that's not a natural thing to go, okay, I realize you guys all want to go left, but we really do need to go right. But that's what it takes. And so that takes practice.
Yeah, well said. Well, let's turn to A16Z. What's the backstory behind you and Mark founding Andreessen Horowitz?
Yeah, so, it was funny. At the time, we really felt that, venture capital hadn't really changed much, in the 40 years since it began, or kind of in the technology version. There was an industrial revolution version of it with James Pierpont Morgan and others. But in this new version, it was very much like it began. And we thought there was just so much more opportunity to kind of do more and do better than that. And kind of the first thing that we noticed was, to be a big function of venture capital at that time was replacing the kind of founder with a professional CEO. That was a big, I would say it was the key competency of the best firms. And we thought, we had noticed that if you look at it historically, the very best tech companies that had the biggest runs had been run by their founders for a very long time. So if you look at, Hewlett-Packard or IBM or, Microsoft or, Apple, the once and future founder, and then, the modern companies like Facebook and Amazon and so forth, the founders were very involved. So why was the profession so focused on replacing them? And then, from our own experience, we felt like, Opsware would have definitely died if if it wasn't run by the founder, because like I was the one who screwed it up, so I was the only one who knew how to fix it. And that, that kind of led us to think, well, what if we built a venture capital firm that was really designed to help the founder become a CEO rather than replace the founder. And we kind of built the whole idea around that. So we were like, okay, what doesn't a founder have that a CEO has? And there were really two things. One was, a network that was as powerful as like Bob Iger's or somebody like that. And then, the second part was the skill set. And so we kind of created this firm. We built a very, very powerful network, and it's why we have over 400 employees. And, today, and we're the biggest venture capital firm headcount wise, is because we have so many people building that network. And then, on the other hand, we have people who have been CEO, who have founded companies in the firm, who can really know what it feels like to be in that position and kind of develop somebody. So that was the original idea of the firm.
Yeah, well, you were definitely a leader and well ahead of your time. My observation is still are in that regard.
I appreciate that.
So you've said that you bring to your portfolio companies or your portfolio company CEOs skills and network or access to a network, and then marketing. Can you just describe how you think about those three?
Yeah, so the network is kind of, so we have a whole teams that do nothing but know every great executive in technology. And so that, when you go to hire a CFO, first of all, you have to understand, like, what is a CFO? What is a good CFO like, and so forth. And we have a whole kind of network for you to meet and draw upon and so forth. Then, similarly, we do the same thing around go-to-market. So like, what big, company CMOs or CIOs or CEOs do I need to know? And we've kind of mapped them and, know all of them and so forth. And so any kind of network that you don't know, the capital markets or, analysts or whomever, we already know for you, so you can access that very easily. And it's not just, one partner knows them, it's the firm knows them. And, we've got a whole team around that. Then, the expertise comes in many flavors. It's one is like people like me who have kind of, okay, I've been a CEO, I've been a founder, I know what that is like, and I can kind of help people learn the skill set. But also, like, if you look at what we do in the world of Web3, a big thing that most founders don't understand very well is this combination of how game theory and technology meet in the form of this thing, tokenomics. And we have, on our team to help you with those skills, Tim Roughgarden is leading a research team of the kind of greatest thinkers in the field, so that you can kind of get help thinking it through these kinds of things. So it's kind of just this, okay, what do you need? What skills do you need? What knowledge do you need? What networks do you need to run a company? Then on the marketing side, marketing was kind of interesting for us because we had this, at the time, venture capital firms didn't market. And so, like one thought we had is, well, if they're not doing it, we ought to do it, just counter program it. So we kind of quickly built a very big brand through that. But the bigger idea that we had was venture capital was very opaque in those days. So it was kind of the idea with venture capital was a mystery, right? Like, why did Sequoia fund all these great companies, or why did Kleiner Perkins fund all these great companies? Well, we're not going to tell you, but there's some secret magic fairy dust that they have. And if you want the fairy dust, then you have to go to them. That was kind of the marketing strategy. And we thought, well, what if we built a firm that was totally transparent, where all of our positions, all of our thinking on things we just published? Wouldn't that be interesting, because we get to see so many things technologically, so many things operationally, and from a management standpoint. And, we ought to think of ourselves as making a contribution to the knowledge set of how you build a company. That was kind of the original marketing idea. And, we've been kind of doing that ever since.
The website, the A16C website, is like a publishing company, and it's just awesome. For those that aren't familiar with it, you should become familiar with it. It's just very, very good, I think. So Mark said software is eating the world at one point. I've heard you say software is eating every industry. Tell us about that. What does that actually mean?
This argument was, look, software, there's this tremendous growth that's coming because software is eating the world. And there were kind of multiple forms of that. The first thing was software was becoming more important than hardware. And this is why, like, the US made this huge comeback in electronics where, it had all been in Korea and Japan and so forth. But all of a sudden, as we discussed at the beginning, if everything is a computer, then software becomes the most important and differentiated thing. And so now Apple could play in that market, even though, they could never manufacture, as well as they could in Asia, because software was the high value component. But then if you took that further, you'd go, well, no. Software is not just eating hardware, it's eating kind of all the industries. So the biggest bookstore is, Amazon, and the kind of most important new movie studio is Netflix, and at that time, and the biggest taxi company was going to be Uber, and the biggest hotel company was going to be Airbnb, because there's no business that wouldn't be much better if there was a world-class software team at the core making kind of everything from the customer experience to how efficient it could be and how profitable and so forth was kind of software based, as opposed to kind of the way we built those industries initially. And that's kind of really played out. And then the kind of, next thing that's happening is like, on our bio team is, software is eating biology. And what we mean by that is we've kind of moved from a chemical model of the human body where we build these molecules, we try them out, et cetera. And now we have an information-based model. We can sequence your blood, we can, sequence your DNA, we can sequence your microbiome, and then all of a sudden there's this information model. And well, why is that interesting? Well, now you can apply software to it. You can take all your computer science techniques and AI and everything, and you get on that technology curve.
Yeah, and there is the health side of that. You made reference to payment and outcomes and so on. Are there a lot of companies that you're looking at on the health side as opposed to the bio
Oh, yes,
side?
definitely.
I'm just wondering if they're...
For sure, because they really go together in that, if you go, well, why are there so many fewer like VCs in bio and health than there are in kind of regular tech? And it really ends up being that the answer is the go-to-market is so complex. The technology is complex too. So you have to have, kind of skills in the technology that very few people have. But the go-to-market is, in some ways even more difficult in that you've got, you don't just have the customer. You have the customer, the doctor, the healthcare provider, the insurance company, and the government. And they all can screw you up if you're not careful, right? So we have a company, Alpha Health, that kind of helps, AI to just like literally bill the insurance company correctly, but you need like the most advanced AI in the world to do that. And so like that's an important healthcare problem. And then you have this very difficult issue where you've got insurance companies who are optimizing to pay as little as possible. And then you've got healthcare providers who only get paid, per procedure that's approved. And so then you're going, well, am I going to do the thing that's going to cure the patient, make them healthy, diagnose it correctly? Or can I only do that if I get paid?
Final question is for those younger people who are interested in healthcare and they're interested in founding or entrepreneurism, what advice would you have for them, Ben?
Well, I think that it's really, 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 really important to understand what we refer to as the go-to-market. So, there are so many products that make perfect sense in healthcare and bio right now, that are very buildable. But the challenge that we see, like every company that we work with, if they get stuck, doesn't get stuck necessarily on the product, but tends to get stuck on like how you deliver it, how you get it through the FDA, how you get kind of all the participants signed up. And the companies themselves aren't kind of traditional kinds of economic actors, so they're more unpredictable. Like the way a hospital operates is very, very different than, selling something to, say, Federal Express. And understanding that and understanding what makes those things work and so forth is just a really, really essential part of being an entrepreneur in the healthcare space.
Well said. Thank you, sir, for your time and your wisdom today. Very much appreciated, Ben.
All right. Well, no, it's great seeing you, Gary, and thank you for having me.